Well, hi again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of 100 Yards of Football. This is the 2026 Draft Prospect Show, where we are going to look at some of the top prospects that are in college right now, a few of the seniors, a couple of the underclassmen that might end up going early, and we're going to analyze where they are right now. It's a long way to go before the draft, but we're going to just wake up the echoes, so to speak, and get you ready for some of the top players at specific positions that you can watch now and go, maybe those guys are right. These are some guys that are going to have some great NFL careers. So we're going to talk about that. Brian LeBel's with me. Joey Clinkscales is with me. And the three of us, we're just going to kind of break down two players here today. We're going to look at Arvell Reese, a linebacker. He's out of Ohio State. So you're going to be hearing and seeing a lot of him in the next couple of weeks, all the way up until January. It's pretty much a lock that Ohio State's going to make it. And then Jordyn Tyson, a wide receiver out of Arizona State. Now, remember, last year, Arizona State kind of surprised everybody in a Big 12 appearance. And doggone, they came here to Atlanta and played their hearts out in an overtime game against Texas. And Cam Scatabo just had a fantastic second half. But watch out for Jordyn Tyson. He's one of those guys that had an amazing year, and we'll talk about both of them in just a second. First, we're going to start. Joey, when we break down players, you look at them a little bit differently. I look at them and I take the emotion. I look at the Ohio State, and I know the position where they are in terms of the rankings, and I look at the horseshoe and some of those other things. You've got to just look at the player and what he does, what type of talent he has, where his feet take him, and the height, the weight, the speed are important, but you're also thinking about, can this guy help my football team be better? So talk a little bit about what you're looking for when you start to analyze some of these players.
Well, first and foremost, I'm looking at a skill set because I'll give you one quick analogy. I mean, you can watch the Kentucky Derby and you never see any donkeys in the Kentucky Derby. They're all thoroughbreds. So you got to look at a skill set. You got to know what the guy can do, what he can't do, how he gets from point A to point B, how athletic he is. And that way you can determine how you can use him in your offense, how he fits. And then secondly, once you get through that and you learn about the intangibles of the player, what kind of kid he is, his work ethic, how long he's been playing football, find out his love for the game. Then the next thing you want to know about a prospect is, how can he help me on special teams? Because a lot of times these guys walk in the door, they aren't starters. So if they aren't starters, they have to be contributors on special teams. Now, that's not quite as important as it used to be with the way the kickoff and the kickoff return rules are now from that standpoint. But it's still important from a punt return and punt standpoint of how these guys can help you on special teams. And that's where it may not be the first round pick, but it's those other guys that will really make up the bulk of your team.
Yeah. And Joey, you bring up an interesting point, at least from my perspective. You can't measure heart. Are there ways that you can either ask questions or do through interview processing or talking to grandma or how do you try to figure out how deeply desiring the prospect of playing in the National Football League can be for a certain guy versus another guy? Is there a way that you have a tangible way to measure that?
Well, no, I don't know if there's a tangible way to do that because there have been a multitude of first-round busts in the history of the National Football League. And a lot of times it's not from a skill perspective. It's from a heart, character, work ethic, toughness perspective that you may see something in college and that just does not transfer to the NFL. Yeah. Because you're playing against grown men who have mortgages to pay and kids to feed and moms to take care of. So life is different once you get to the NFL.
Yeah, and sometimes you sign a big contract. You've never had that much money before. No one has. I mean, you get a number one draft pick type of contract, and your desire slips. You just say, "I got everything I've ever wanted. That was my goal." It may not be. It just depends. Everybody's different. Correct. Brian, one of the ways I know you look at it is from, hey, how can this guy in a draft pick where my team might get 4, 5, 7 picks, somewhere in that range, it's usually less than 10. How how could this guy make a difference to get my team where we need to be? If I'm drafting high, in other words, I'm a top 10 pick, that's because my team needs some help. We didn't win a whole heck of a lot of games. So give me your perspective on what you're looking for.
It kind of shifts. Also depends on the round, right? If I'm picking a guy in the top 10, I want an immediate impact guy, right? Someone I can plug in day one, whether it be offensively, defensively, and he can, immediately improve the situation we're in. Because if we're picking that high, usually it's pretty poor. But as you get later in the draft, you might try to find some guys and say, hey, he's got the talent, he's got speed, he's got whatever. It's just he needs some coaching. We need some refinement. We need to kind of tweak a couple of things, and maybe he's a project guy, and that's more reserved for the teams that have a lot of talent and can spend an extra year or two developing someone to come in and be an impact. That's like what the Eagles would do, right? They draft a guy and say, hey, maybe everyone else is looking at him a little bit differently, but he doesn't have to come in immediately, and he can learn behind some guys that we have that are really, really good. And maybe a year from now when there's an injury and we need him to step up, that's when we'll bring him in. But it changes based on your situation. It changes based on the team you have on the field. It also changes based on what your expectations are. And sometimes if you're, a coach or a GM, whatever position you're in, you're kind of on the hot seat and you need to add some talent now. And maybe you're trying to add more instant talent. Maybe you trade up or whatever it is, but it varies, to answer the question. And, sometimes you're just watching a kid, you can kind of tell talent wise, but once you get later on, that's where you find gems. That's where you got to do your homework. And that's where you got to, really understand the ins and outs of what some of these guys are going through. And, like Joey said, their love for the game, right? Because sometimes you can find those late round guys that just love the game of football, and they'll play special teams. They'll do whatever you need. And eventually maybe they can kind of promote themselves, become even stars. You've seen guys like the Seattle Seahawks when they had their run of dominance. A lot of their players were late round guys that they worked hard, they panned out.
Yeah, there's a difference. You got 10 guys and pick a position, folks. It doesn't matter which one it was. We'll talk about linebackers just because Arvell Reese is the first guy that we're going to talk about. Well, if you got 10, one of them is going to run a little bit faster than the others. And they'll be a really good player, but his 40 time is a little bit less, and he has one or two less reps in the bench press or some of the other tests that you have. He might be a little bit lighter, and he may have played for a smaller school and didn't go in the national championship. And all of those things matter. So you may get a guy that's 7th or 8th that's a great player. He could be an All-American, but the way he's scouted and the way he's ranked could move him from a 1st, 2nd round pick to a 5th rounder. He still wants to play. He wants to be noticed, and he certainly can play. But where he ranks, obviously, is it changes from one combine to the next, and it's an amazing process. Let's look at one of the guys that we're going to look at right now. 6'4", 243-pound junior right now out of Ohio State, Arvell Reese. We're going to start with you, Joey. Let's talk a little bit about, I like to call them all-compass players. Linebackers that can go north and go make a tackle in the backfield for a loss. They can get the quarterback. They can run sideline to sideline. They can also cover well. They go back and they can cover a lot of ground, and they can be like a safety from a linebacker position. Tell me what sticks out in your mind's eye regarding Arvell and what some of his skill sets are.
Well, I'll say this. Prospects, the best prospects can fit in any system, and scheme matters. You can be a guy that go to the wrong team where your skill set doesn't match what they're trying to do. It's like sticking trying to stick a square peg in a round hole. Sometimes it just doesn't work. However, this kid, Arvell Reese from Ohio State, his talent level will fit any scheme. He plays inside. He plays middle linebacker. He plays Sam. He plays Will. He puts his hand in the dirt and rush outside. As a passer, he rushes the passer from off the ball. Okay, you see him dropping coverage. He runs sideline to sideline. This is athletically and physically is not a lot he can't do. You can see him set the edge sometimes. That can improve, obviously, because that's not his natural position of actually being able to set the edge consistently. But he's really strong in his upper body. He's got great be able to shed ability. There's a lot of things to like about this kid, and his versatility is unmatched right now in college football because he's able to do so many things. And if you're comparing him with guys I've seen in the past, one name you'll know right off the bat. The other name you have to be really football aficionado to really understand how he plays. The one guy is obviously Michael Parsons because he's done so many things. This guy plays in the middle of the field. Okay, you see him rushing the passer on passing downs. You see him bend the corner because he's got quick twitch. He can bend and flatten and get to the quarterback. I think he's got 6.5 sacks so far this year.
He does, yeah.
And on the flip side of that, there's a guy that came out who was a first-round pick, Tremaine Edmonds out of Virginia Tech, who was similar size, 6'4", 245, 250. But he almost never rushed the passer at Virginia Tech. He was always in the middle of the field. I think when he came out of Virginia Tech as a junior, he was 20 years old. So he's really young, and that scares some people because they had a young guy with that kind of length, and everybody wanted to try to make him an edge rusher, which he wasn't. He's always been comfortable calling the defense, being a middle linebacker, and this guy has that ability too. But the fact that he has that kind of burst and acceleration when rushing the passer will give whomever takes this player the ability to put him in a lot of different positions, and he's going to affect the quarterback either as a rusher or in coverage.
Brian, he's 6'4", 243, which is kind of in the middle a little bit. He probably could gain a little bit weight, but he runs a 4.58. A sub 4.6 is excellent no matter where you are for a kid that's that big and that heavy. I think he's above average in so many of those different ways. And Joey pointed out some of the different specifics that he can fit in this position, that position. In terms of getting on a roster, the more you can do, the easier it is for the coaches to want to keep you. What sticks out in your mind's eye about Arvell and his abilities right now? Even though he's only a junior, he's got a lot of football left to play. I don't think he's going to stay his senior year. There's no reason for him to do that. But what does he offer right now that you go, this is hands above shoulders and everything else, head above shoulders, where he's ready to come out right now?
I think when he puts on the pads, right, there's a difference between the speed that you have at the combine. His pad speed is fantastic. He does everything for them. They put him one-on-one with running backs. They feel comfortable doing so. When he's on the field, if you're a tight end, you almost want to avoid you're running those middle routes. He takes away a whole section of the field for your quarterback just because, his size and his speed, his quickness, and his play recognition. Dude, reports are he lives in the film room. He loves breaking down film. He loves watching film. He's very, very smart, and he adapts very, very quickly. And all of that stuff, those are NFL caliber skills and intangibles that you need to have to be able to succeed, especially at the linebacker position. And when you can do a lot of things that make it to where a team like the Ohio State Buckeyes, who were the best team in the country last year, it's looking like they're the best team in the country this year. They almost refuse to take you off the field. Obviously, you're doing something right. If you go back, we got the picture with Arch Manning here. If you look at the Texas game, a lot of Texas fans, I was kind of wondering what the fall off was, and Texas couldn't really move the football. And if you look at the run and the pass up the middle, they couldn't do much anything because Arvell was all over the place. He played a phenomenal game. He does so every single week. He's a staple on the defense, and he's the anchor, and he's a big reason why Ohio State's the number one team in the country right now. But when you're looking at negatives, I mean, a lot of people are saying, well, maybe his motor's a little too high. Maybe he kind of puts his head down too much and he gets too focused on, making a play at the quarterback. But there's not really much else you can kind of knock this kid for. He's fantastic. Everything he does is at a very high level. It's very clean. It's very precise. And he moves with purpose and energy that, right now, if you look at the linebackers coming out in this draft class, it's essentially unmatched.
So his weaknesses, there's a couple of them. You were talking about his aggressiveness, and sometimes he over pursues or at least goes after something. Joey, that's a coachable thing that you can say, listen, you got to keep your eyes open and watch for the play action, or watch for the bootleg, or watch for the fake, or watch for the cutback from a running back. Those are things that, especially for a guy that loves watching film as much, even though they say that's one of his weaknesses, I think it's correctable.
Oh, without question. I mean, you would rather in an athlete, you would rather try to take the foot off the gas than try to put the foot on the gas to get him to go. And this guy goes. I mean, sometimes he's on the field a lot, so his motor, he'll know where the ball's going, and he'll rest a half a play so he can be ready for the next play. But I have no issue whatsoever with his effort, with his toughness. With his play demeanor, which matters. This guy's going to be a good player in our league for a long time. And I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up running closer to 4.50 to 4.48. I mean, this kid is athletically, he's hard to miss, especially in the open field. You can see him open up his gait and run. He's got a great stride, and he's a real player.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting point that you bring up there, Joey, because as soon as the season's over, everybody's going to go get with people like yourself. They're going to get with the high-end trainers that are basically, I look at it like this. If you need to take the SAT and get a certain score on the SAT in order to be eligible for college, you're going to get somebody to tutor you on that test. There are people that are going to put you in a swimming pool for about 2 weeks to work on your fast twitch muscle fiber. Your diet's going to change. Then you're going to go out in the track and you're going to take about 1 to 2/10 of a second off. You're going to add weight, add strength, get your bench press up a little bit. And I know people do this. And Joe, I'm going to ask your comment. 7th rounder, middle linebacker from Anytown, USA, runs a 4.8, and benches 2.25, 18 times. He spends 6-7 weeks with a high-end guy, spends some money, and runs a 4.68 and benches 2.25, 26 times, and he becomes a 2nd rounder, and he's a multimillionaire. Is it worth the investment? And you see people do this all the time, right, Joey? Yeah. Seriously, this is a specific part to pass this test in the combine to move up in the rankings.
You know what? So this is how I'll answer that question. It matters. It's rare that somebody moves up like that, but I understand the point you're making. The tape matters, okay? And that's the first and foremost. If a guy, his football skill in the tape should match the grade that you're putting on him, okay? So that's what I talk about Indy. When guys go to the combine, we have an idea what the guy what his speed is already because we can see it on tape, his football speed. Okay, sure. So the numbers should back up what you see on film. And when that doesn't is when the conflict happens. Okay, now that's when you get in trouble. The old Raiders used to take all these height, weight, speed guys. I mean, that was the big joke at the combine that this offensive lineman is 6'6", he's 6'7", he runs a 4.955 flat. That's going to be a Raider guy. Okay, you watch him play on tape. You have concerns about his not only his
he can't run block very well, right?
But his physicality. Right. So those things. So the tape has to match the physical ability.
And Brian, we've thrown a lot out there. Before we move on to our next guy, what in particular Arvell is he's already got a great 40 time. If he gets that down, maybe a 1/2 or something like that, or he can run in the 4.5s. My gosh, the 4.4s actually 4.49 or better. He's going to be a multimillionaire.
Yeah, I think he's already up there. But yeah, I just think realistically, like you guys mentioned, the ability to kind of just trim it down a little bit, right? Improve your combine. It is like studying for a test and being able to improve just on anything really, because the tape is there, right? The size is there, the weight is there, everything else is there. It's just going to be putting it on display and maybe just, a last second doubt that maybe a team picking in the top 4 or 5 had going forward and say, maybe wish he was just a tick faster and he knocks it off. And absolutely this guy, linebackers are kind of weird to grade because teams aren't necessarily, it's like running backs, right? You're not necessarily going to throw all in on one, but shelf life is an issue, but this kid he's a special talent. He's tremendous, and you can watch it each week when Ohio State steps on the field. He's a looming presence, and I think that's a good trait to have at the linebacker position.
Well, he wears number 8 on the field, folks, and you're going to see a lot of him in the next month and a half, provided they keep going. It could be 2 months in terms of the college football playoff. Number 8 linebacker for Ohio State. They should do very well. They're an amazing team, and they've got some great talent. We'll talk about some of their other players. But before we do, let's go to Jordyn Tyson, wide receiver. He's 6'2" out of Arizona State. He's only a junior. Had a real coming out party last year. Did very well. His weight is 200 pounds, might be pretty average right there. And if that's going to be an issue, I'm questioning his strength. It's not the weight, it's how strong is this kid and how good is he to be able to go against press coverage. That's what I'm looking at, Joey. Tell me where I'm wrong. His 40 time is 4.5 right now. Very decent. Could be a little bit better. There are some guys that run obviously a little bit faster than that or a lot faster. But his ability to go up and get those 50-50 balls is something that really makes a difference, at least in my mind's eye. Tell me what you're seeing right now in Jordyn.
No, I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, his ability to the strength and the injury history will all come into play as we go further down the line. But this is a smooth athlete. I mean, he's not speed deficient. He just didn't have great top end speed on tape. But he runs easy. He can drop his weight. He can get in and out of his breaks quickly. There's a lot to like about this guy. He's got really natural hands. He catches with ease. In the big games, I didn't see him win many 50-50 balls in big games. There were some games when you can see that happen. But when you play the big games, then you have players on the other side that have similar skill set and similar size. And obviously, moving up to the NFL, you're going to have even more of that. Guys that are a lot better, where not only does do you have to win physically, you have to win mentally as well. So, but this kid, he's tough. He's a willing blocker despite the size. So I don't have any concerns about that. And he's, again, a really consistent route runner. He has a great feel for the game. I like his football instinct and acumen. He's really good. He's just not – I don't see him as being special at anything right now. And maybe last year's better because I did not look at last year's tape. I know he was a lot more productive last year than he was this year. So I'm assuming there's a new quarterback, and obviously they ran the ball a lot better last year with Scatterboo there. So there are always a lot of dynamics that come into play when you're grading guys whose production is different or less than the previous year. But this guy's a talented player, worthy of a high pick. I just don't know, in my opinion, if he's a first-round pick.
Okay, interesting. Tatoria McMillan, who's out of the University of Arizona, Brian, he came out last year, and now he's making a difference. Here we are halfway in the season, and he had a great game against the Falcons. He had 8 catches. Are we looking at a guy from Arizona State in Jordyn Tyson? He's got a basketball background, so I think he knows how to position himself to get in between the ball and the defender. That's an important thing. Joey mentioned that he blocks well. A lot of receivers don't, and so I think that's a plus that he has. His aggressiveness, people don't argue that. His yards after catch is another thing. Once he catches the ball, he's tough to bring down. Those are some keys that I think that would be beneficial to any player, but he certainly has exuded those types of skill sets for Arizona State.
Arizona State utilizes him very interestingly because he's a guy that plays in the slot, play inside, play outside. They've put him in the backfield. They've kind of brought him in on like the swing passes and the jet sweeps. And if you watch his highlight, like Joey said, the film this year isn't really as good as it's been in the past, but last year he was fantastic. And a lot of it has to do with talent around you, right? It's a lot of these receivers, you're only as good as the quarterback who's throwing you the football. The ability to get down the field and play off of play action is crucial because this kid has a lot of talent. He's got good hands. His highlight tape is, it's kind of something to behold because it's very interesting. He goes up, he high points the football very, very well. Joey mentioned it's not against the highest caliber competition, so it's kind of hard to judge. But the stuff you see on tape is, hey, I'd want him to be able to translate and do that on Sundays. Now it's going to be a little bit different doing it against, an NFL caliber DB versus, a Kansas State or a Kansas or whoever they're playing on Saturdays. But you can only play against the guys that are put in front of you and the schedule is put in front of you. And Tyson's battled some injuries. He had a bad knee injury back, I think it was in 2023. He missed the whole year. He had an issue with his collarbone, but he's bounced back. He showed some resiliency, and there wasn't really any drop off. The numbers are still really, really good. I think he's quick. I think he's got great football instincts. I think if he finds the right situation in the NFL and he finds a good quarterback, I think he could be a very productive player for a while.
Joey, Brian just brought up the knee injury. You brought it up as well. From a general manager perspective, or at least from a front office, if a guy is coming back from a knee injury and he runs a 4.5, is that a reason that you say maybe we can find somebody that's a little bit faster? We'll wait until the 3rd, 5th, 7th round, whenever it is.
No, we rely on our training staff and medical staff quite a bit when we're drafting players, and they'll give the guy a green light or say, I wouldn't invest in this guy before like the 3rd round because he's got XYZ problem, whether he's on medication, whether he's I'm not going to get into in depth on a lot of that, but medication for physical or mental issues or whatever. That there are a whole multitude of issues that players come to the league with that you have to be aware of and make a decision because of that. This kid, even this year, I was watching the Texas Tech game, and he had issues, looked like a hamstring. He was cramping up a lot. So that, there are a lot of things going on physically that you have to be aware of, especially when a kid is not a super muscular. He's kind of a more thinly built kid. So all those things come into factor other than just what he's doing on the field. So it's like, and I hate to use this analogy, but it's almost like a stock. If you're heavy in the stock market, you want to know everything about that stock before you invest a ton of money in it. And it's the same way with when you're drafting players. You need to know as much about him physically and athletically before you are willing to invest a lot of money because of, Michael Penix. He's injured again, probably for the year. That's the Atlanta quarterback. But 5 of the last 6 years, he didn't finish the season. So he had a major injury history walking in the door, and then you invest a number 8 pick in him, and physically, he's not built to last. He's a really thin guy, and I'm not saying he won't be a Hall of Famer when it's all said and done, but his injury history has to matter when you're spending that type of money on a guy that's a franchise player.
Let me ask you a very general question, and I'm not referring to Jordyn Tyson, but because we're talking about Jordyn, it's popped up in my mind. He had a knee injury. Not Jordyn's knee injury, but generally speaking, anybody else, is it harder for that guy to go from a 4.5, and I'm using Jordyn as the example, to a 4.39, as opposed to a guy that hasn't had that issue and may not be able to get, or he may have an easier time working on his speed during the pre-combine training that you have. The reason I'm asking is because there could be some limitation, not for Jordyn, but for some players. Do you see that, generally speaking, with you, the training staff that you have from a medical perspective? Is that an inhibitor for guys to really work on getting that little extra step quicker?
Well, there are a lot of variables that come into play. First of all, when was the knee injury? If it's at the end of the year, then that's more problematic than if it happened, in the beginning or the middle of the year. Now,
or 2 seasons ago. Yeah.
Or does he have a history of it? Now, right. And he may not ever be a 4.39. His fastest time, usually a guy that's running a 4.5 probably never ran much faster than a 4.45 ever.
Okay.
Those aren't numbers. As much as they train, they just don't have the same quick twitch muscles as some other guys. That's just genetics. You can blame your parents for that. Some of that. As much as you work out, you can blame your parents for some of that.
There you go. Yeah.
But so it is what it is. But the tape, how does he play on tape? I'm gonna give you a classic example. Jay Rice never ran much faster than a 4.5, 4.55. And some people will tell you he was slower than that. But on tape, he was so smooth and fluid that he ran by everybody whenever he needed to. He'd make a play and home run. And you have guys that run 4.3 and weren't ever able to do that because they were tight.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I got to see him on numerous occasions, and Dion is the only guy in the league that could catch him. And that didn't always happen because Jerry he had a special ability. Brian, before we head out, One of the weaknesses of Jordyn is that his top end route running, he can work on that. That's a coachable thing. We can get better at that. But talk a little bit about, the difference between running a route as Joey just mentioned, like what Jerry Rice does, to where you create separation because you run the route better than anybody else has, and the DBs aren't used to that, versus a guy that's just fast and can get to that spot better than somebody else could.
Well, I think it's almost a positive for him because I don't think he's fine-tuned the route tree yet. I think he still has to improve on some of his cuts, being a little more fluid, maybe being able to sell a route a little bit more, especially at the higher level. You're going to have to do it exceptionally well if you're going to want to be successful. But he's already done a phenomenal job at creating separation without that. He still has a lot of talent. And I think that alludes to the fact that he is, just very skilled at the position naturally. And as you get better coaching, which you're going to have, going from the collegiate level to the NFL level, you're going to have more film analyzing, and you're going to have certain things that they're going to nitpick versus what you have, where he's at Arizona State right now. But I think the sky's the limit. I think this kid is very, very good. I think he's got the ability to do so. I think the intangible stuff, right? When he plays the game of football, he looks like he has a ton of fun doing it also. It's almost like he's in the backyard, being able to make guys miss, being able to make cuts, being able to beat a defender or maybe sell a route. And I think he's only going to improve at that. I think that's an upside for Jordyn. And I think, like you said, it's just he's not there yet, but he's very capable of figuring it out and improving more so at the next level.
Well, Jordyn Tyson, he's 6'2", 200 pounds. He runs a 4.5. He is currently the number 1 ranked wide receiver. And Arvell Reese, he is 6'4". He weighs about 240 pounds. He also ranked number 1 right now, running a 4.58. Two terrific players. Final thoughts, Joey. We'll start with you.
Well, the draft is a few months away, and that there will be a lot done that will change between today and the first weekend in May when the draft. The first weekend or the last weekend in April when the draft actually happens. Minicamp starts first weekend in May. So there's a lot to be done between now and then. I want to wish these guys good luck and keep working, but know that this is only the beginning of the process, because you got the physical interviews, you got the mental interviews, you have the psychological testing that happen. So it's a whole multitude of things that happen between now and the time the first card goes to the commissioner.
Somebody's got to take the Wonderlic test, don't they? They got to take that Wonderlic.
Absolutely.
I had to do it, and I have to admit that was not an easy test to take. I have to admit it was. I wasn't ready for it. I'll
give you a quick story. You're gonna laugh. Sure. I'll give you a quick story. So, with the Raiders, we use that, but we also use a test that came out from one of the military branches, and that was really effective on kind of telling you the kind of player you were getting, and that we found that to be a lot more useful rather than, the Wonderlic, which really didn't delve into that part of it. It just, but as a scout, I remember I gave my daughter, who was in the 6th grade at the time, I said, I'm gonna give you the Wonderlic test. She didn't know what it was. I gave her the test. And because we had, there were some guys that had taken the test and scored very poorly. And I gave it to my daughter when she was in the 6th grade, and she scored a 17 on it. and we've had guys to score single digits on it, and which was very concerning at the time. So I was like, okay, thank you, Sydney.
And for those who don't know, I've got a copy of one somewhere here on my desk that I got years and years ago. It wasn't from the NFL; it was a different one, but it's the Wonderlic test. They've got different versions. Mm-hmm. And for those of you who don't know, there's 50 questions. You have 12 minutes, and as soon as you open up the page, there's a 2-page test, or like a little booklet, and you open it up, and as soon as you do, they start the clock. You have 12 minutes, and you can answer as many of those 50 questions. And correct me if I'm wrong, Joey, there's only one player, a punter, if for Yale or Cornell or whatever, he got a perfect 50. He's the only player in the history of the game that's ever gotten a 50. So if you got a 49, you should consider yourself to be a Hall of Famer or something like that. But it basically just asks progressively harder questions. First one is not relatively hard. But hand is to glove as foot is to, and then you got to fill in the blank. It'd be sock or something like that. But then there's some really difficult questions about, if Barry has 12 apples and Tom has 7 and Mary sells hers for a nickel, how many does Tom need to sell for to make $3?
A lot of cognitive thinking going on there.
Really is, yeah. And some guys aren't. Look, I see ball, I hit ball. Right. I'm a baseball player, or it doesn't matter. But it's not an easy test to take. And because of that, as you have said, Joey, there are other tests that might be more relevant to how you would perform at the highest level. The military tests, I'm sure.
Right, and performing under pressure. So we found that to be a really useful tool.
Yeah. Well, Brian, we still have plenty of time, but we're looking at some of the higher end prospects. Obviously, Arvell Reese being the top at his position right now. Things could change, but for all intents and purposes, he should remain up there near the top for the remaining process here, all the way up until the end of April.
Yeah, this is for all the teams, or excuse me, all the fans of bad NFL teams. This is the kind of we've reached the stretch of the year where like, all right, it's time to do some homework and see what talent's going to be available in the top 10, the top 15 for us next year. Kind of a bright spot, you know what I mean, for some bad teams to look ahead to the talent that's up and coming. There's a lot of it this year, so that, there's some positives there. We're going to have a lot of good players to break down over the course of the next, couple weeks and months going forward. But Arvell's a very talented guy. Jord's a very talented guy. And I'd be shocked if, either one of those guys goes past round 1 or round 2. They have to have something disastrous happen in the combine, but a lot of talent here, and looking forward to the rest of the process. Still got a few months, but we're creeping closer and closer to April. Yep,
we certainly are. And there's going to be some time and obviously a lot of players that we're going to be looking at between now and then. So we appreciate everybody tuning in. This has been 100 Yards of Football with Joey Clinkscales, with Brian LeBel. I'm Harper LeBel. We appreciate you being a part of the 2026 Draft Prospect Show, where we looked at Arvell Reese, we looked at Jordyn Tyson, and we looked at the Wonderlic test. So all of those combined, we appreciate it. We want to say thank you for tuning in, everybody. We hope that everybody has a